Welcome to Guppy Sex 101. Stay tuned. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jason with Jadren Aquatics. How are each and every one of you doing? So, today's topic is guppy breeding. I know what you're thinking. You just put a male and a female guppy together and put a little Luther Vandross on, lower the lights a little bit, and then wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. 28 days later, you got babies everywhere. Well, that's true, but sometimes there can be a little bit more to it than just that. So, first of all, let's talk about the difference between the male and the female. So I'll put up a picture here. We've got the male who has the gonopodium that you'll see here in the picture that the female doesn't have. That's his reproductive organ. And typically, the males typically have the fancy fins, so that when they get a little bit older, a lot easier to determine the difference between them, simply because of the fin. Whereas the female, pictured here, typically has the gravid spot, where it gets dark as she becomes pregnant, and also she has the triangle shape down by her anal fin. So easy peasy to be able to tell the difference between males and females. So the next decision that you need to make is how many are you going to get? Understand that you can be quickly overrun, so there's not a whole lot of reason to buy a whole bunch of females. If you buy one male and two females, you're going to have babies. So you always want to make sure that you have more females than you have males, because the males will chase the females to death. So you need the females to get a break, because the more that they're chased, the more stress they get, the bigger chance they have of ending up with some type of disease, because a lot of the diseases that guppies get come out of stress. So minimum 2 females and a male, which we call a trio. Even better to get 3 females and 1 male, 4 females, 1 male, 2 males and 4 females, whatever. Just make sure that you keep quite a few more females than you do males. It's just healthier for them. It's kind of interesting because guppies actually have the ability to breed with other fish. One of the ones that I'll show you a picture of right here, this is called a golly, or I think some people call them muppies. This is when you take a guppy and you cross it with a molly. So it's kind of neat looking, but from what I understand is that no one has been able to breed them past that. Whenever they breed like this, they end up sterile. I guess it's kind of like when a horse breeds with a donkey, it creates a mule, which is sterile. So you can't create more mules from the mule that you have. I know you're thinking, Jason, that's absolutely irrelevant to guppies, but I'm just trying to show you my immense knowledge on sexual reproduction. All right, so let's talk about the tank that you're going to put them in. So you've got different ways that you can breed them. If you want to, you can just take them, put them in their own tank, and you can just let them colony breed. That means they'll have babies. Those babies will grow up. They'll mate. They'll have babies, so on and so forth. You don't really have to do anything other than just put them in there, and that will begin to happen over and over and over. Or if you have them in a community tank, they'll breed in a community tank. But just understand that not only the mothers and the father guppies, but pretty much any other fish that is in there is going to eat the fry, or going to attempt to eat the fry, at least the ones where they can actually fit in their mouth. So fry will disappear extremely quickly in most community tanks. Now, the more heavily that you have it planted, and the more rocks they have to go in and out of, in other words, the more cover that the fry have, the better chance they have of surviving it. So, let's say you take them and you put them in a 10-gallon tank. You've got a trio that's in there. Again, the best thing that you want to do is you want to provide them with as much cover as possible. Typically what I have is the setups that I like to use is I put Java moss down at the bottom. I let the Java moss try to grow everywhere, and then I usually have like a water sprite or something that floats up at the top, maybe some water lettuce that has the roots that go down. So again, it creates the ability for the fry to get away from the parents. Some people will also take it and they'll put some of the bigger river stones and stack the river stones up on the bottom, so there's all kinds of gaps and stuff, so the fry have the ability to get away. Because typically for most fry, they have this natural ability to hide because they understand that something wants to eat them. So you need to give them a place so that they can get away and not be eaten, so that you can have the most fry as possible, if that's what you're trying to do. So with the parents, you want to feed them a good diet just like you normally would. Typically guppies, it's probably best to feed them at least twice a day. They eat like crazy. Typically I'll only feed them about enough food that they'll eat within about 2 minutes. If you come back after about 5 minutes and there's still some food down there, then you've most likely you've fed them too much. But it's best to change up their food so that you're not just feeding them dry flake all the time. Work in some frozen food, like some frozen brine shrimp, Daphnia, or maybe some bloodworms. And then the best thing that you can possibly feed them is live food. So if you can grow out some brine shrimp, or you have maybe some vinegar eels, or you have some Daphnia, or some other small type live food, that's absolutely perfect for them, because that stuff provides them with all the nutrients and stuff like they would need naturally in the wild. As far as temperatures to keep them in, most all of the fish that come in to your fish stores, most all of them come either from Florida or Thailand or Sri Lanka, guppies I mean, that come in. So they're typically kept about 80 degrees all the time. So keeping your guppies around 80 degrees is probably best. Guppies have been inbred so much that some of the ones you get, the genetic in them are not good at all, and you start getting them in water that starts getting a little bit too cold and they just absolutely fall apart. So that's probably a pretty good area to shoot from, 78 to 80 degrees, typical tropical fish type settings. But I don't really think that the temperature plays a big role in how many fry are produced. Some people seem to think that temperature will have something to do with how many males or how many females. But I've yet to see anybody really do any tests that can really prove this out. It just seems to be sometimes a common theme that someone that keeps their fish room hotter, they may tend to have a lot more males than they do females. If someone's watching this and it's something that's happened to you, be sure and leave a comment down below and tell me, what your experiences are with what you keep the temperature at. So the males and females typically reach sexual maturity. The males usually at about 6 to 8 weeks, and the females are usually about the same time. Sometimes they can reach sexual maturity a little bit earlier. And so by that time, if a female and a male are around, that female is going to get pregnant. It's absolutely inevitable. So if you're trying to breed a certain line, or you're trying to get a certain trait out of a certain guppy, you need to remove the males and the females as quick as you can. Even to the point where maybe you need to get some reading glasses so you can get in there and you can see and try to find those ones that have the gonopodium so that you can get those separated out before they impregnate those females. That way you can pick and choose which females and which males that you want to breed. But if you don't care what type of fish that you get out of it, then just let them go. Don't worry about any of that. But I would suggest for the health of guppies in general is that you cull. So if you've got some of these ones that have some real bad curves or curved spines at all, or just some ones that look sickly, you need to cull those out. You don't want to keep reproducing those, because those genetics that are in that sick fish can easily come on to the fish that they had before. So it's a really good idea after you have some fry is to look them over, and for those that are sickly, it's best to remove those and cull those out of your tanks. So once you have a male and female together, and that female gets impregnated, that female will hold sperm. So even if you remove that female from that male, she'll hold sperm. I've heard different things. Some people say they'll hold it for a year. Some people say it's only probably 2 or 3 times. But either way, that female will continue to give birth over and over and over, even when that male isn't around, because she's held on to that sperm. So again, if you're trying to breed for certain traits, you've got to get them separated, because once she's been impregnated once, she's going to have who knows how many sets of fry after that. So a typical female will give birth approximately every 25 to 35 days. So every single time she'll have those fry, 30 or so days later, she'll have fry again and fry again. And she can have as little as 2 fry, and I've heard people that have had over 200 fry or around 200 fry, which is insane. You can only imagine the size the female had to have been to be able to give that much. So it's a wide amount that you can possibly get. It seems like the average seems to be somewhere around 20 or 30 fry at a time. Again, depending on what size they are. You know, there's some smaller type guppies that don't typically have as much, and then there's some ones that are big that they'll easily have 60, 70 at a time. So it's really better for guppies to stay in a harder water, in a water that has a higher TDS, so it's got total dissolved solids. It's because the females are giving birth so much that they're using up the minerals and the calcium that's in their body to produce those babies, and they've got to be able to get that back again. So when you have your TDS count up, or the hardness of the water up high enough in your aquarium, then they're able to reabsorb all that they need, especially calcium. Calcium is one of the main components in aquarium water when you're measuring what your hardness is. Now, that's a whole nother thing. You can take a TDS meter and you can put it in your water and you can measure the TDS, but that's simply measuring the total dissolved solids. So anything else that you have in the water, if you're putting fertilizers in there, it's going to measure that. But you really need a test kit if you're going to actually measure and see what the actual true hardness of your water is. So another reason it's really good to have a heavily planted tank when your fry are born, because the fry will begin to eat some of the stuff off of the plant, some of the bacteria or some of the, you know, smaller bugs and stuff that are living on there. They'll feed off of that. You'll see them immediately begin to pick off of the stuff that's in there. And another thing that's really good after your fry are born is you want to feed them some baby brine shrimp, or, you know, some other type of live food. But brine shrimp seems to be the most common one because they're the easiest to hatch. You can typically take some brine shrimp eggs, and they'll typically hatch out in about 2 to 3 days. So if you keep 3 different sets of brine shrimp going, you'll always have fresh brine shrimp for them. So you can feed them that brine shrimp, you know, 3 or 4 times a day if you want to. It'll really speed up the growth, feeding them all the time. And now the other thing that you want to take in consideration is the water quality. It's really best if you do probably about a 50% water change every week or so on the fry. It's going to help with their growth. When you keep them in the same water, it'll begin to stunt their growth. All right, I hope somehow I've helped you in any way, shape, or form. If you guys have anything that you would like to add down below, something that you do that seems to work out well, be sure and leave that down in the comments below. I'd really appreciate it. So thanks again, guys, and God bless.